Maximus had always considered himself a victim of injustice. While other teenagers were out having fun, he was stuck at home, grounded again for reasons that seemed ridiculous to him. This time, it was for accidentally crashing his father's luxury car into a neighbor's fence. An overreaction, really. After all, fences could be fixed, cars could be replaced, and he had only been mildly texting while driving. His parents, however, did not share his perspective. They had taken his phone, revoked his gaming privileges, and even posted a humiliating lecture on social media about teaching responsibility. The betrayal burned deep. Lying on his bed, fuming, Maximus let his fingers wander across the laptop keyboard. The internet was a wonderful place. A person could buy or sell almost anything: clothes, gadgets, even exotic pets. And then he had an idea. A stupid, impulsive, completely unserious idea. He found a strange website buried in the depths of the internet. The title glowed in a language he didn't recognize, but the layout looked familiar enough. Midnight Auction House. Beneath the title, a question. What will you sell today? With a smug grin, he typed, 2 slightly used parents. Annoying, overprotective, think they know everything. Will accept any reasonable offer. He hit submit and laughed to himself. The website flickered for a moment, then displayed a message. Item listed successfully. Bidding begins at midnight. Maximus barely glanced at it. It was obviously some weird prank site. He shut his laptop and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of a life free from nagging and punishments. The next morning, the house was eerily silent. Normally, his parents would be making breakfast, chattering about news or weekend plans. Instead, nothing. Maximus stretched lazily and wandered downstairs, half expecting them to ambush him with another lecture. But there was no sign of them, not in the kitchen, not in the living room. Their bedroom was empty. Their car was still in the driveway, but their phones and wallets were missing. A strange chill ran down his spine. He called out their names. No answer. He checked his laptop, heart pounding. The Midnight Auction House page had changed. Sold. Maximus stared at the screen, his stomach twisting into knots. The buyer's name was unreadable, just a string of shifting symbols that hurt his eyes. Below it, a receipt. Final bid accepted. 10,000 soul shards. And beneath that, delivery complete. No refunds, no returns. Enjoy your purchase. Maximus's pulse roared in his ears. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a game. He had actually sold his parents. And now, he had to get them back. Maximus slammed his laptop shut, his breath coming fast and shallow. This had to be some kind of elaborate prank, right? His parents were probably out for breakfast, laughing about how they had finally found a way to teach him a lesson. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. The house was too quiet. No passive-aggressive notes left on the fridge. No texts demanding to know why he wasn't up yet. He pulled out his phone and called his mom. Straight to voicemail. He tried his dad. Same result. He refreshed the Midnight Auction House page. The sold message remained, unmoving, unchanging. The buyer's name still shifted like something alive, the symbols twisting and curling in ways that made his brain itch. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Maybe there's a help section, a contact form, a customer service chatbot, something. There wasn't. Instead, new text blinked into existence. Congratulations on your sale. Your item has been successfully delivered to the esteemed buyer, Lord Bazgorth, ruler of the 12th realm of eternal torment. Maximus swallowed hard. That didn't sound good. Another line appeared. Curious about your transaction? Click here to track your delivery. With shaking hands, he clicked. The screen flickered, and suddenly, a swirling vortex of purple mist exploded from the laptop. The entire room tilted. Maximus tumbled forward, his stomach lurching as if he were on the world's worst roller coaster. His furniture stretched and twisted, the walls folding in on themselves. Then, with a sickening pop, everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in his bedroom. He stood in the middle of an enormous, glittering palace, its walls carved from obsidian and glowing with eerie red veins of molten rock. Huge banners hung from the ceiling, each depicting monstrous creatures with too many eyes and too many teeth. Tall, robed figures with horns drifted through the halls, carrying scrolls and whispering in a language that felt like it shouldn't exist. Maximus turned in a slow, horrified circle. He was definitely not in the city anymore. Before he could even process the nightmare surrounding him, a booming voice echoed through the palace. "Ah, the seller arrives! Welcome, Maximus, to my humble abode." The ground trembled. A massive throne of skulls and fire sat at the far end of the room, and lounging upon it was Lord Bazgorth himself, 7 feet tall, sharp fangs, skin like molten lava, 2 curling horns that scraped the ceiling. A pair of glowing yellow eyes locked onto Maximus with terrifying amusement. And standing beside him, dressed in luxurious robes, sipping goblets of some otherworldly drink, were Maximus's parents. They looked happy, suspiciously, unreasonably, way too happy. His dad had a golden crown perched on his head. His mom was adorned with enough jewels to bankrupt a kingdom, and both of them were grinning as if they had just won the lottery. Maximus's jaw fell open. No, this wasn't right. His parents weren't supposed to be enjoying their new life in the 12th realm of eternal torment. He was supposed to be rescuing them, but judging by the way his mom casually draped an arm over Lord Bazgorth's shoulder, that was going to be a serious problem. Maximus stood frozen, his brain refusing to process what he was seeing. His parents, the same ones who grounded him for getting a C in history, were now royalty in a demonic dimension. His mom clinked her goblet against Lord Bazgorth's, grinning like she was at an exclusive 5-star resort. His dad adjusted his golden crown and inspected his velvet robes, nodding approvingly. Maximus was going to throw up. Lord Bazgorth leaned forward, lava-like skin crackling as he flashed a row of gleaming fangs. "Ah, Maximus! You must be so proud. Your parents are adjusting wonderfully to their new lives. They have proven themselves to be quite exceptional." Maximus tore his gaze from the demonic luxury his parents were basking in. Exceptional? His dad used to spend Saturday mornings yelling at customer service over expired coupons. His mom once cried because their local yoga studio switched to digital punch cards instead of paper ones. What exactly was exceptional about them? Maximus finally found his voice, and it came out in a strangled, horrified whisper. I need to return them." The room fell silent. Then, booming, howling laughter filled the palace, bouncing off the obsidian walls like 100 monstrous echoes. His parents were laughing too. His mom wiped a tear from her eye. "Oh, sweetie, return us! You must be joking! Why would we ever go back?" His dad spread his arms wide. "Look at this place! We have a castle, Maximus! A literal castle!" Maximus gaped at them. Oh, this was worse than he thought. His parents weren't just adjusting to life in the 12th realm. They loved it. Bazgorth snapped his fingers, and a group of tiny, goblin-like servants scurried forward, carrying trays of glowing desserts, ancient scrolls, and what appeared to be a 3-headed cat. His mother gasped with delight and scooped up the cat immediately, scratching all 3 of its heads at once. Maximus clenched his fists. No. This wasn't supposed to happen. He wasn't supposed to convince his parents to leave. He was supposed to rescue them. Dramatically, heroically, with like a magic sword or something. His dad adjusted his crown. "Son, we appreciate the concern, but honestly, we should have done this years ago." Maximus made a strangled sound of frustration. This was his fault. He had listed them as a joke, and now they were acting like he had given them the greatest gift of their lives. But before he could even try to argue, Lord Bazgorth held up a clawed hand. His eyes glowed dangerously. "Ah, but there is a small issue to discuss, young Maximus." Maximus went rigid. "Oh, great. What now?" The Demon King slowly grinned. "You see, when you sold your parents, the contract was quite clear. You received payment, and in this realm, every deal must be equal. If you truly wish to undo the sale, then you must offer something in return." Maximus's stomach dropped. No. This was supposed to be simple. He was supposed to undo what he did, not bargain with a demon lord. His parents didn't look worried at all. His mom was already feeding the three-headed cat enchanted cheese, and his dad was browsing through a catalog of magical scepters, like he was picking out a new grill. Bazgorth leaned closer, his fangs gleaming. "So, young Maximus, what will you offer in exchange?" Maximus swallowed hard. He had nothing. No money, no power. Nothing that a demon king would want. But Bazgorth was already smirking, his burning gaze flickering with amusement. "Oh, don't worry," he rumbled. "I already have something in mind." Maximus felt the weight of his own terrible decision settling over him. This was going to suck. Maximus's pulse pounded in his ears as Lord Bazgorth studied him like a particularly amusing bug. The Demon King already knew what he wanted. That was the worst part. Bazgorth finally grinned. "Your parents are proving quite useful, young Maximus. If you want them back, then I require something of equal value." Maximus barely stopped himself from rolling his eyes. His parents were not valuable. They were humans. Fragile, clueless, and entirely useless in any setting that didn't involve grocery store coupons or Facebook arguments about lawn care. What could he possibly trade that would match their worth in a demon's eyes? Bazgorth leaned forward. "I want you!" Maximus's heart plummeted into his stomach. Oh no. The Demon King's smile widened at the look of horror on his face. "Not permanently, of course," Bazgorth continued smoothly. 1 year of service. You will live in the 12th realm, learn our ways, and serve my kingdom. In return, your parents will be returned safely to their mortal world, untouched, unchanged, and, well, slightly more spoiled than before. Maximus's entire body locked up in protest. 1 year? Stuck in a demon's castle? Learning? Demon things? Absolutely not. His mom was now lounging on a levitating chaise, being fed enchanted grapes by a servant. His dad was holding a scepter that shot out tiny fireworks, chuckling in delight as he tested it on random goblins. They were having the time of their lives. And now, he was the one who had to suffer for it. Maximus took a deep, shuddering breath. Maybe there was a way out of this. Maybe if he refused, "If you decline, the contract remains as is." Bazgorth's voice cut through his thoughts like a blade. "Your parents remain here permanently, and the deal remains unbroken. If you want to fix your mistake, you must make a sacrifice." Maximus wanted to scream. This was so unfair. He was trying to do the right thing. But of course, like every single other time in his life, trying to do the right thing just meant getting completely screwed over. His mom waved at him lazily from her floating couch. "We'll visit," she called. "If the portal allows it." Maximus felt his soul physically leave his body. He had no choice. He had to do this. With the weight of his own horrible decision crushing him, Maximus forced himself to meet Bazgorth's eyes. He gritted his teeth. He nodded. The Demon King's grin stretched impossibly wide. "Good," Bazgorth rumbled. A contract appeared in the air, glowing and pulsing with ancient magic. Maximus didn't even read it. What was the point? He was already doomed. He grabbed the quill and signed his name. The ink burned as it settled into the parchment. The deal was sealed. Bazgorth snapped his fingers. Immediately, a glowing portal ripped open in the air, swirling with violent reds and purples. Maximus's parents floated toward it like VIP guests getting a free ride to first class. His mom winked at him. His dad shot him finger guns. "Love you, bud," his dad called as they vanished into the swirling light. Then, they were gone. Maximus stared at the now empty air where they had been. They didn't even say thank you. He slowly turned to face Bazgorth. The Demon King chuckled. "Welcome to your new home, Maximus. Your training begins at dawn." Maximus wanted to die. He had no idea what was coming. Maximus woke up to a bucket of green sludge being dumped over his head. It smelled like rotten eggs and burnt rubber, and it was somehow both ice-cold and blistering hot at the same time. He gagged, flailing in his tiny stone bed, but before he could even demand an explanation, a massive, armor-clad demon yanked him up by the collar and tossed him onto his feet. "Training starts now!" the demon growled. Maximus didn't even get a chance to wipe his eyes. The moment his feet hit the ground, the demon shoved a rusty, jagged sword into his hands and pointed at the door. "Run!" Maximus hesitated. "Run! Where?" "Run!" The floor vanished beneath him. Maximus screamed as he tumbled straight into an underground cavern, a sprawling obstacle course of boiling lava pits, swinging axes, and enormous snapping monster jaws. Oh no. Something huge and scaly roared from the other end of the course. A six-eyed horned beast the size of a school bus slammed its fists into the ground, sending shockwaves rippling through the cavern. Maximus barely had time to breathe before the beast started running straight at him. So naturally, he ran for his life. The next 12 hours were an endless cycle of torture. First, Maximus had to dodge flying spikes while carrying a sack of screaming demon kittens across a tightrope. If he dropped even one, he had to start over. Then, he had to fight his way through a swarm of bitey shadow creatures armed with only a wooden spoon. The spoon snapped immediately. The shadow creatures found this very amusing. After that, there was fireball dodging. A giant demon with 3 heads and an alarming number of abs hurled flaming meteors at him while he was forced to hop across tiny floating platforms that exploded at random. Every time he collapsed from exhaustion, a group of laughing goblins would pour a fresh bucket of mystery sludge on him and tell him to keep moving. By the time the training day finally ended, Maximus was covered in bruises, soaked in sweat, and possibly missing an eyebrow. His legs felt like jelly. His arms didn't even function anymore, and he was fairly certain that one of the demon kittens had permanently claimed his shoulder as a nesting ground. He collapsed onto the hard stone floor of his cell and groaned into the dirt. His stomach rumbled angrily. Oh, right. He hadn't eaten all day. A goblin appeared out of nowhere, shoving a rusty plate of something green and wriggling in front of him. Maximus stared at it in horror. "What is that?" The goblin grinned toothily. It didn't answer. Maximus decided he didn't want to know. He was never going to survive a whole year of this. He was going to die here. And the worst part? His parents were probably having a fantastic time back on Earth. Maximus lay on the cold stone floor, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was how his life was going to end. Not in a flaming sports car, not in a tragic action movie-style explosion, but rotting away as a lowly servant in a demon king's domain, covered in mystery sludge and missing an eyebrow. It had only been one day. One. And he was already broken. A full year of this? Impossible. He needed a plan. He needed to escape, and he needed to do it tonight. The problem? The demon castle was a fortress. The walls were enchanted, the guards were brutal, and the exits were rigged with traps designed to incinerate intruders. Or in this case, intruders trying to leave. But Maximus had one advantage. The demon servants were ignored. They were considered too weak, too insignificant to be a real threat. If he played it right, he could use that to his advantage. First, he had to blend in. That meant looking like an actual servant. He stole a ragged cloak from the goblin laundry piles and smeared himself with extra dirt for effect. Now, he just looked like another unfortunate soul stuck in eternal servitude. Next, he had to find a way past the guards. He noticed that every night, the kitchen sent a cart full of leftover food scraps down to the lower dungeons. The guards barely glanced at it. So, Maximus did what any genius would do. He climbed into the cart. It was disgusting. Half-eaten eyeballs, suspicious purple sludge, and something that smelled like feet but was somehow still moving. But he shoved himself inside and held his breath. The cart rattled forward. This was it. Freedom was just a few feet away. Then, something went horribly wrong. A deep, booming voice filled the halls. "Halt!" Maximus froze. The demon guards stopped the cart. Then, footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate. The demon king himself was walking toward the cart. Maximus could hear his massive claws scraping the stone floor, the rustle of his long, tattered cape. The air around him grew thick with magic. The temperature dropped. Then, the cart moved. Not forward, upper. The The Demon King was lifting it. Maximus's heart pounded. He curled into a ball, hoping, praying, begging that the king would just... The cart flipped over. Maximus tumbled out, landing face first in a pile of demonic garbage. There was a long, terrible silence. Maximus looked up. The Demon King loomed over him, taller than a skyscraper, eyes glowing like molten fire, a twisted crown of obsidian resting on his monstrous head. Maximus tried to laugh it off. Maybe he could talk his way out of this. Maybe. The Demon King raised a clawed hand and snapped his fingers. The world shattered. A black hole opened beneath Maximus, sucking him in like a piece of dust caught in a storm. The castle vanished. The guards disappeared. Even the air itself collapsed inward. Then, a sudden, blinding flash of light. When Maximus opened his eyes, he was back in his bedroom. He bolted upright, panting, hands shaking, half expecting to see the Demon King standing over him, ready to toss him back into servitude. But no. He was home. His luxurious room, his obnoxiously expensive furniture, his 70-inch gaming monitor, all exactly where he had left them. A dream? Number it had been too real. Then a notification pinged on his phone. Maximus picked it up. It was from the auction site. Transaction canceled. Item parents returned. Thank you for using supernaturalmarket.com. Maximus's heart stopped. He scrambled out of bed, rushed downstairs. And there they were. His parents, sitting at the kitchen table, casually eating breakfast. His dad looked healthier than ever, practically glowing in his royal robes. His mom sipped enchanted elven tea like it was completely normal. They looked at Maximus and smirked. Maximus felt sick. Something was very, very wrong. The end, or just the beginning? Oh, things are about to get real weird for Maximus. Let's dive into what happens after his parents' suspiciously relaxed return. Maximus stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, watching his suspiciously content parents sip enchanted tea like they hadn't just spent days living in a Demon King's castle. His dad's royal robes shimmered slightly, changing shades of blue every time he moved. His mom, who used to nag him about screen time, now radiated a serene, almost otherworldly glow, like she had spent a century meditating on top of a magical mountain. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. But before Maximus could demand an explanation, his dad snapped his fingers. Instantly, breakfast appeared on the table. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, even a glass of perfectly chilled orange juice. Maximus felt his stomach drop. His dad didn't cook. His dad didn't even know where the stove was. And yet, here he was, summoning a 5-star breakfast with a flick of his wrist like it was nothing. Maximus had seen enough horror movies to know how this worked. His parents had been replaced. The question was, by what? Were they shape-shifting demons, clones, brainwashed royal servants? Maximus needed answers. So he did the only thing that made sense. He grabbed a wooden spoon from the kitchen drawer and poked his mom in the arm. Her skin shimmered, like a mirage. Maximus stumbled back. Oh no. Oh, absolutely not. His mom was glitching. Panic set in. What if they weren't real? What if the real versions of his parents were still trapped in the demon realm, living their best lives while these magical imposters took over their house? Maximus needed proof. And so, Operation Parent Investigation began. At exactly 3 p.m., his mom made tea. Normal. What wasn't normal? She didn't touch the teapot. It floated over to her on its own, pouring hot tea into her cup with perfect precision before drifting back to the counter like a well-trained butler. Maximus almost screamed. His mom just smiled and took a sip. Later that evening, Maximus caught his dad levitating, not jumping, not standing on something, straight up floating 3 feet off the ground while reading the newspaper. When Maximus made a choking noise of pure terror, his dad casually lowered himself back down and kept reading like it was completely normal. Maximus almost passed out. At midnight, Maximus crept downstairs to check on them. The living room was dark and quiet. His parents had gone to bed, or so he thought. Then he noticed something strange. A door that had never been there before. It wasn't a regular door. It was tall, old, covered in glowing runes, and humming with an eerie electric energy. It was just sitting there in the hallway, where there had only ever been a blank wall. Maximus stepped closer. He placed a hand on the wood. The moment he touched it, a low, inhuman voice echoed from the other side. "You're not supposed to be here!" Maximus sprinted back to his room like his life depended on it. Maximus lay awake, staring at his ceiling, sweating bullets. He had two choices. Option 1. Ignore everything. Pretend his parents weren't acting like enchanted wizards with secret doors to nowhere. Hope it all just goes away. Option 2. Investigate. Figure out who or what his parents had become. Option 1 was safe. Option 2 would probably get him turned into a frog or thrown into a pocket dimension. Unfortunately for Maximus, his brain loved terrible decisions. He was going with option 2. Time to break into the mysterious glowing door. Should he go alone or call for backup?
If you like this video, then do subscribe to this channel.